screen on Discord so you can see it live.
Okay. All right.
All right. So, are you a mid laner or a bot laner? And this is just off roll.
So I'm a mid laner. I guess to preface myself a bit, I was like a big Katarina main. I hit like challenger with her last season. But yeah, I just play mid. I just like playing champs I have fun with. So I do weird stuff like Shin mid, Ziggs mid, Lilia mid. This game I got bot lane. It wasn't exactly like the real like perfect game for like VOD Ryu because, and you'll see like my teammates just kind of fucking speed run it. But I'm sure like there's some perspective of like things I could have done better. So yeah.
So why did you choose this game?
Because I got pretty fed, but we still like I wasn't able to like carry it. And I'm wondering if like I'm a really big shot caller in solo queue, so I'm wondering if like some of my calls were bad, or like should I have used my lead in a different way?
All right. So okay, that makes sense. With that being said, what are you looking like? What are the specific things you want to improve today in this coaching session? And I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna be like writing stuff down. It's not something to be worried about. I encourage you to write stuff down too, at any point
Yeah, no,
if
of
you feel
course,
it's
of course.
necessary. But yeah, I'll just be writing, typing. So don't let me distract you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, of course. Things you in mind. I guess I'm kind of just like looking for perspective. I personally like VOD review my games a lot, so I try to like understand, where I can improve on. But I think, after a while that can become you can kind of tunnel because you're not actually like understanding things from a much different perspective, which obviously you as an amateur and challenger mid laner have. So yeah, so I'm kind of just looking for insight. I'm trying to improve. I think one of my problems is like consistency, but I don't understand like how that would be solved technically, like through this one game of VOD review. So maybe like improve through macro or like decision making. I would say is like my number one goal in this VOD review.
Okay. So my goal is gonna be to give you sort of the perspective and the tools you need to not only improve in the short term, but also improve in the long term. So what I mean by that is I want to give
JDG
you
is out.
the
Ablaze hard, Ablaze not like
sort of
this.
like mindset to be able to problem solve on your own further so that I'm not just telling you all the things that you are asking questions about, but you can actually figure out the answer to the questions yourself and like be able to basically get the most out of the session because I probably won't do a lot of repeat sessions where I haven't done a repeat session yet. It might happen at some point, but I'm not going to be able to come back every week like a more normal coaching schedule would look like. So my goal is definitely going to be trying to get you to like figure out a lot of the things and like kind of guide you onto the right path and trying to get you to into the right mindset in how to basically solve these problems that you're having. Any problems that you don't know that you have or that you're trying to figure out. So I'm gonna ask you a lot of questions and don't feel like I'm asking you something because you're doing something wrong. I'm asking just for your thought process, right?
Yeah,
I
of
don't
course,
want you to
of course.
feel afraid or like it's super defensive. Like I'm just asking because I want you to be able to think about it and just give me an answer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
with that being said, we'll just jump right in. So in terms of so you just like playing fun stuff, that's fine. In terms of runes and like champion choice here, like can you give me the rundown of why you chose that?
Yeah, so obviously like
Yeah, dude,
normally
thanks
these
for the
are
3 month
like
3 sub.
my Ziggs mid runes. Not only is he fun, I think he's kind of like underrated. Obviously,
Welcome
he's
back.
more popular in the bot lane role. I just like to play scaling, so Transcendence, Mana Flow, Storm. The reason I picked Ziggs is because we needed wave clear. So if you look at our team, like Yone, Kane, Fizz, Leona, like mid game we just won't have any wave clear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a nice mix of EP damage, obviously because we have Yone and Kane. Also, and then I guess for my secondary runes, Taste of Blood, I think it's very nice for like sustaining later on, like just throughout the entire game. I think if you play Ziggs properly, that's the only sustain you need, and I think you can really maximize the potential of Ziggs by really spamming the ultimate properly and using it for kill potential. So I've had a lot of success just with Ultimate Hunter
Mm-hmm.
in that case. I know like the alternate builds are like Spellbook, which is more defensive. There's like Phase Rush, which is also incredibly defensive. But I'm just like a very greedy player by nature, so I really like maximizing my damage.
Okay. And have you tried other setups and decided that you like this one, or have you just mainly tried this one because it's like the most scaling?
I think I've tried Spellbook and Phase Rush like once before. I know there are games where like I don't like Phase Rush. I know there are games where like if I'm mid and they have like a bunch of assassins to where like I just even shouldn't even be playing Ziggs in the first place. It's like I should be going Spellbook there. But I would say I go the Shin page like the majority of the time.
Okay, that sounds good. So we'll just start off. You mainly want to talk about like more later game decision making, but basically all the games start at the beginning of the game. So I want you to tell me sort of
Minions have spawned.
if you feel like you're the shot caller in on your team, a very important aspect of that is having like a good vision on how you guys are going to win this game. So
Mhm.
I want you to tell me like how do you envision this game playing out and you envision you winning this game?
Yeah. So um I think so if I'm just like looking at the matchup wise, like it doesn't really seem that like Yon has a great matchup into Riven. Fizz probably isn't going to beat Rumble 1v1, so he's probably looking for like roam potential. Kane is obviously like a weaker jungler, because he's trying to farm form, and I don't really think Jhin Rakan is a strong lane. So like we either win by like me being strong, and kind of like carrying, or even if my teammates fall behind, I can just like stall really hard as Ziggs, and like not let them get any turrets and still scale up. Um, and that way you can get like Yon to late game and win because we obviously outscale the enemy team. There's no way like they outscale us, considering like we have Ziggs, Yon, and they're like Riven Rumble. But it's kind of just going to be like a fiesta of early mid game and like which solo gets ahead. So it's kind of like my role to make sure I don't get behind bot lane. Like I don't need to win early bot lane, but I need to make sure I don't get behind so I can like scale better.
Okay. So you're thinking that just through your scaling advantage that's going to basically carry you in like the later stages of the game in the team fights?
Yeah, at least getting into like the mid game, right? Because it's like at least what I found for bot lane mages is you're not really a champion before your first back. I'm also like teleport versus heal ignite, which like kind of further goes to that point of winning 2v2s is a little difficult.
Mhm.
So actually, like very early on with this laning phase, like I'm just kind of just playing for mana flow, and because we leash too, we're like behind on the wave, which
Mhm.
means like getting level 2 is like not possible first.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, like Leona's like not gonna be able to touch the wave. So yeah, so like I'm really just kind of looking for mana flows and just trying to play to that.
All right. That sounds good. So since you're pretty like aware of your preference for like more scaling builds, I want to like know when you feel like that isn't the case or if that ever isn't the case. Do you ever feel like you ever have to like play more aggressive in this game or like in any specific situation?
In this game or just like across
Both.
like other games with other
Both.
champions.
Both.
Let's see in this game. I'm sure there's like an instance like I could have played more aggressive this game, but like I do play Ziggs like kind of aggressively. I think more so than like other players. And hopefully it'll showcase that. There are definitely times I have to do it. I mean, obviously, I mained Katarina and I play a lot of that, and it's like the second I get Gunblade, it's just like go go go, right? Like I'm forcing, we're fighting, and if the enemy team makes a mistake, I'm just gonna like run over the game.
Hmm.
So this play was pretty bad, and I made a mistake here because I like hit the cannon
You want me to
and
go
I
back?
wasn't really think. You can if you want. But I was hitting the cannon, and I shouldn't have done that because I don't play like bot a ton, and that screws over Leona because she needs to get the cannon, but she kind of like hinted for it by walking up. And now we're just like slow pushing. I don't know. Like I don't really see how I actually like win 2v2 until first pack, right? With like Guardian, with Rakan.
Right. Again, I'm asking just to get your thought process. I'm not saying you're ever doing anything wrong, right? I just want to hear what
Yeah,
your
no,
thought
of course,
process
of
are.
course.
So,
Yeah, and that's just me explaining my thought process too.
yeah,
Like,
totally,
yeah,
totally
I
okay.
VOD review a lot of my games. So.
Something I want to also mention is, of course, you can always ask me to talk about something, but I also will like pause when I feel like it's necessary. I think like this game, it's mainly the later stages of the game, so I'm probably not gonna like super go into like the early laning phase. I just want to sort of talk about your mindset with your preference to like play the game a little more slower, but you are saying that you play it more aggressively, so I want to sort of like hear. I just want something like some clarification because you were saying like in your runes that you like being really really greedy, but that in your gameplay you're actually relatively aggressive. Do you think like that's a good combination to have, or do you think that there could potentially be something better there? Or I just want to hear your thoughts on that because it seemed like there was a bit of like a mismatch in terms of intent and
Yeah.
like play.
Yeah, no, of course, definitely. But I think that is kind of just like my personal playstyle. So like, if I'm playing like Katarina, like a #1 rune page, I'm running even in like even if I'm like in Grandmaster Challenger games, is like I'm running Dark Harvest and I'm running like Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm, and it's like my laning is like insanely hard, which means I just have to play it perfect. But if I ever get ahead, or even if I go even with those runes, like the enemy team is still like kind of fucked because I shouldn't be ahead with those runes.
Right.
So it's kind of like I'm of the like viewpoint that like I just have to play better than the enemy, even with like even with like non early game or non mid game runes.
Okay.
And I think I've kind of like found success with that. Obviously, you said like what is your like win condition, and I find it quite unreliable to rely on teammates. So yeah, so like here I know they're doing dragon, so like I'm just not shoving. And there's like nothing we can do, right? Because like our jungler isn't here.
I want to kind of explore this more. So I'm curious about what like your goal is in like League in general. Is it just something you play for fun? Are you looking to go pro? Are you looking to be a coach?
Oh god. I think I'm just really big on improvement. So like I really have fun improving at the game. And although like I have hit like higher ranks, my biggest problem is consistency. So I kind of just want to improve to a point where like my baseline of skill just gets higher. But yeah, no, I'm like not going like pro or coach or anything like that.
Okay. So with that in mind, I also want to ask, just like for more background information before I really start the meat of this coaching session. In terms of playing like aggressively, is that something that you feel like you're going to try to do ever, or are you just happy with your current play style or with your current like rune setup of playing like full scaling runes, most greedy runes possible, and then just playing like that? Is that something that you're comfortable with and don't really feel the need to change, or do you recognize that it's something that could be changed and are just sort of waiting for the correct time?
I honestly, I really like my runes, and I think, and I guess that's like something where like I would have to be convinced otherwise. Like if something is like objectively like better, sure, but I feel that I'm like a really 1v9 player. I feel in the sense of I'm playing just to solo carry the game, and it's like me like sure like let's say like if I took Scorch for example, like that could give me a little more lane pressure, but like Scorch isn't gonna like win me the game, right? If the game goes to like 30 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like if I have like Storm, maybe I can just like straight up one shot someone,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be like a much bigger impact. So I definitely like get what you're saying, but I feel like I've had so much success by having these greedy runes and just playing like perfectly or like playing to my best ability around them, even though it is harder. Just so like later in the game, I just have so much more agency.
Mm-hmm. So I want to start with this because one of the big things that you mentioned was that you wanted to learn how to be more consistent. And I think that if you're looking to be more consistent, you're not really setting yourself up for success in terms of rune page. Because essentially what you're doing is just going the greediest rune page possible, which, is, going to feel the best later into the game, but it's definitely not the most consistent rune page, right? You're not going to have the capability of being able to build your own advantage consistently. So is that something that, you mentioned yourself that you feel like you want to get more consistent? Is that um, a valid reason to like consider doing something else?
Like I think you bring up like a solid point there, right? Where there's kind of a discrepancy between my approach and being consistent. Like, yeah, it's hard to be consistent if you're just playing always like insanely greedy. Um, I personally feel that over the seasons, my struggle with inconsistency is less about like my rune page and more of like my mental state in game, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of making lapses of judgment, or I'm just like doing something that is like possibly dumb. Whereas like if I was focused, that wouldn't have occurred, right? And I think that's like if I'm like flow, like right, like, if we talk about like flow state, right? It's like
Right.
um flow state is like something that I used to be
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
achieve,
I know what flow
and yeah,
state is.
yeah. Yeah, no, no. So it's like something that I used to be able to achieve, but like I struggle to achieve it as more now. And I don't find that's because of my rune phage. I just find
Okay.
that like it's just like my for whatever reason, like my mentality or something.
So is this like an example of something that you feel like isn't inconsistent? Going for the display and dying for it? Something like a lapse in judgment?
Um yeah, like possibly. I mean, and then I guess you can give me your insight on this, but like so Leona goes up, right? And she goes in for the engage. I'm level 6. So it kind of makes sense, but obviously I'm not thinking about Jin's flash. I'm not thinking about where Lee Sin could be.
Mm-hmm.
Um but it is like a 2v1, so it doesn't look like
No
terrible.
particular reason, just nice.
And then I
Spanish
guess
burrito.
when it happens, and I thought about like flashing here, like just Q flashing the Jhin, like off the stun maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then I just don't expect Lee Sin. I get kicked, and then yeah, we die.
Right. So like that's like what happened. But I know you were asking me a question, but I'm gonna respond with a question. Like I want to hear, do you feel like this is something that is like what you're thinking about when you're saying like you're playing inconsistently? Because this is really like the first thing that really happened in this game in terms of bot lane. Um, so it's a good starting point. Um, do you feel like this is something that, like, do you think this is a representation of your inconsistency?
Yeah, most likely because I think like let's say if I'm more focused about the game, then I'm more like respectful of like, hey, does Jhin have flash? Like could Lee Sin be here? Do I die if Lee Sin's here? Right? Is Lee Sin level 6? And I think not only is that a result of my inconsistency, but it would probably also have to do with me being in the off role. And I'm sure like you
Right.
probably experienced that too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah.
yeah, it's if you're mid lane, it's easier to think about other things.
Mm-hmm. Well, you think it's easier to think about other things in mid lane, or just because it's the main role?
I think because like when I'm in my main role, I have a much easier time like tracking things
Right, right.
because
Okay.
so much of my I play it so much that there's so much like baseline knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like bot lane, right? I'm not like actively thinking about do I die if Lee Sin comes at this moment? Could like Rakan show up? Like, what are their back timers? Does Jhin have flash at this moment?
Right.
Yeah.
So, is this? Do you not know the? Like, I'm sure that. Did you go over this game already, or is this the first time
I
trying?
I, I didn't. I didn't go
Okay.
over this game.
So, I'm sure that you know, like, some of the ways you could avoid this. You've already mentioned them, right? Like tracking Chin Flash, thinking about the enemy jungler. Is the problem that you're having, right? Just the fact that you're not consistently respecting these things, or is it you're choosing to ignore them?
Mm, I mean, in this play, my support is like leading the play, and like my options are like once she runs forward and like Zenith blades in, like the play doesn't look like ass terrible, but it, I don't know, like it would obviously you feel like a really strong like presence just to go in right and follow your support.
Hmm.
Whereas like if Leona hadn't done that play, then I would have been like chill with just freezing the wave.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I would say like that was.
Okay. It kind of sounds to
So,
me that you weren't really that like engaged in the decision making at all.
yeah, and that play like yeah, but I
Okay.
mean like to me like I feel like when you're in solo queue like you don't have much of an option there. It's either I let Leona go in and uh and I just ignore her, right? And either
Hmm.
something bad happens or we miss the kill, or like I go in and we maybe get the kill, and something bad could still happen. In that case, something bad still did happen.
Right. Okay. So I'm just gonna, you know, that's more Leona taking control and you kind of following up, not necessarily something that you were really dead set on. But now at 10 minutes, we're kind of past the laning phase. I want to hear sort of what's your plan right now in the game state, taking everything that's happened into consideration, right? What are you going to try to do? Like what's your goal essentially for the next however long you feel it's necessary to have a goal for?
I think right now, like in terms of just like winning the game, like my solos are doing fine. It's not like Fizz has died. Like their top lane is literally 06. So I could, as long as I'm just like even bottom, or we just like don't run it, like the game should be like pretty winnable.
Hmm.
So, so like I'm just kind of, and obviously I'm Ziggs, so one of my strengths is like taking turrets and getting these plates. So that's kind of like what I'm focused on, so I can just like get my items faster. Um, and in addition to that, like it seems that the only way the enemy team can take control of the game back is if their bot lane kind of like wins the numbers game. But if they roam, then I take their turret. So yeah, so like my goal is just to get this turret.
Okay, that seems fine. How many other plays do you think you could make? Are there any other options that you think are necessary to consider?
As Ziggs at this point, not really that many. I could like the only real objective that's coming up is Dragon. And even then, our you could argue our bot side is the weaker side of the map, whereas like we should just be playing top side to the 5-1 Yon. So I don't really expect my jungler to like ever even come bottom. Uh, and I could roam mid, but it's really dangerous to roam as like artillery mages into like especially someone like Ziggs where like I'm all I have is flash and it's like a rumble Lee Sin.
Wow, that was good.
Yeah, yeah, we just legit just fucking decimate them, and then I just Leona like roams up and I just start like whacking at this turret,
All right. Well,
maximizing my passive.
I think in terms of plan building, is that something that you were like consciously thinking of in the game, or is that just something you were thinking about now?
Of like what I should be doing.
Yeah, like thinking about like taking all those factors into consideration and
I mean, I don't
um
think I definitely didn't like take it as into consideration as like I explained it, but if I'm playing someone like Ziggs, right, it's not the same champion as if I'm playing like Akali or Katarina, right? So like I'm gonna be less inclined to roam, uh, unless like I have ulti or unless it looks like really free.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Do you,
here, I think I have like 2k gold on a back, so like I just don't want to fight.
no. Let me speak. Do you feel that that is like something you should think about? Should you think about the game state in such a detailed way in the game, or do you think it's not necessary?
I mean, it should always be necessary, right? Because like League is a very decision making is like constantly evolving with the game state. So there could be a play where I need to roam mid, and that's just better to do. So I don't think you should ever like disregard a potential play.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, like, when I asked the question, did you think about it as in depth in the game? And you responded no. I'm asking, do you think that you should do that? Not say
Do I think
no,
I should be
just think
thinking?
about it in depth during the game.
Yeah, probably right. Because I think the more in depth you're thinking about something, and the more layers you understand, then the better decision you can make.
So why don't you then?
Uh, why do I not do that?
Because if you want to be consistent, right, that's like one of the best ways to sort of be able
Yeah,
to look and point at something, right? Think about what you're going to do, base it on like the logic that you see laid out.
yeah, yeah. I agree. That's like something you should do. I think maybe part of that is me having that lapse, like I talked about, which is kind of just like that autopilot, or like where I'm not like focusing as hard, or I'm just like tunneling on one thing.
Hmm. So
Mhm.
is it something that you do sometimes and it's just not always? Like
Yeah,
sometimes do you
it's not
constantly?
always.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely easier for me to have the lapse if I'm like off roll, but like I'm not gonna like lie and say like, oh, it never happens. Like, yeah, I'm sure there are times like in mid lane too, where it's like I am not I'm not evaluating the game state as well as I should be,
Hmm.
and because of that, I might tunnel on like a turret or a roam, and it's like it's the bad call.
Okay. So essentially, it sounds like to me that you have like you have an opinion on like how you play when you play well, right? And you have an opinion of when you play like not well. You can explain like flow state. Um, I don't think that it's very consistent to be able to achieve flow state whenever you really want it. Do
Oh,
you
of
agree?
course. Yeah, no, of course, it's something that I can count on maybe like
It
on
just
both my
it
hands
it,
the
it
amount of
just sort
times
of
I've achieved it.
happens, right? Like you're not really gonna you can put yourself in the best situation, but you can't really like rely on it to happen.
Yeah,
So,
I guess to kind of like explain that more, it's not that I like expect to achieve flow state, right? It's just something you work towards. It's
mhm,
more of kind of just improving my baseline skill to the point where like I'm making less lapses of judgment.
right, and
And
that's
I think when you yeah
yeah, and I understand that, but sort of the way that you were answered my question kind of sounded like you were like explaining it like you weren't like playing super well rather than making a mistake or like consciously making an error, right? Because there's a big difference in saying, okay, I made a mistake here, I didn't do this, versus I just am not thinking, I'm having a lapse in judgment, right? One, you're taking an
yeah
active role in like um, responsibility and making the mistake, and the other, you're taking a much more passive role. Um, and you're doing the second thing, which is taking like a really passive way of looking about the mistakes that you're making. And a good habit to build is stray away from that because it's going to make it very difficult to feel like there's something you can concretely focus on. So in this case, right, we were talking about consciously thinking about the map state and like trying to um, evaluate the position at a time. And you agree and you understand that you should always be doing that, right? It shouldn't ever be something you stop doing. But you sort of like explain it away like, oh, I was just having a lapse in judgment. To me, that's like something that shouldn't just be, oh, I was just having a lapse in judgment. If that's something that you're trying to improve on, that should be, fuck, I wasn't thinking about the game. I really need to fix that and not have that happen again, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I made a
No, I
mistake.
agree.
Like it's not something that just, oops, you know, my bad. Like this is the thing that you're trying to improve on. So it should be something that you like directly confront rather than, uh, passively explain away.
Yep. Yeah. No. I'd agree. It definitely kind of sounds like, um, not only does it sound like it, it's I am, in essence, like making more of an excuse. Um, I think part of that's probably just because like I know I can play better.
Hmm.
So when I make like dumb mistakes, I'm like, oh, that was a lapse. But yeah, you're right. It also could just mean that my level of skill has just gone down, and I need to kind of re-improve that.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean your level of skill has gone down. It just means that you made a mistake, right? Like you know humans naturally will make a bunch of mistakes, right? Nobody plays perfect. Nobody will ever play a game perfect, right? You can only play the best that you can, right? And essentially, there are going to be consistent things you can do every single game that aren't going to change. And those are going to be the things that you want to essentially shore up and do as well as you can because they're really the only things you can plan for, right? And one of those
Hmm.
things is going to be, you know, training your mind to always be considering the, outside factors in the game that never going to change, right? Regardless of
Hmm.
what lane you're playing, you always should be thinking of the jungler. You should always be thinking of the path. You should always be thinking about the game state and what you should be trying to do, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
um, making sure that you're not essentially like making like an excuse kind of the way using your words, right? Making a sort of excuse to just like explain why you're not doing something. That's like not the way you should try to approach it, right? You should try to approach it that it's something like you're working towards that eventually you're going to do without thinking because you just do it so often it just becomes a habit. But before it becomes a habit, you have to like consciously do it, right?
yeah. I identify it and work on it.
So I'm going to ask you the same question. In this case, right, what is the plan, right? You just TP back mid. I can go back a little bit. I don't know how much you were paying attention to the game, but you just TP back mid, and I want to know what your plan is for this game, right? Because it's a lot about decision making, like snowballing a lead. I want to know like how you feel about the game state, and just your overall thoughts on like what's going on right now, and like what your plan should be as a team and an individual.
Yeah. So I'd say even like before this play, I made a mistake because Leona kind of like, as you saw, she flashed and she missed Zenith, but I wasn't even like looking at the map, and I didn't even see like Lee Sin kind of walking behind us. So I TP mid to protect the turret because just as Ziggs, as long as I'm alive, they can never take mid turret, and that kind of gives me a lot of agency in the game, and it really like removes a lot of plays from the enemy team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like something that like I definitely protect a lot. Uh, and then I think right here, my goal. So like, if I'm kind of like looking at the game state, uh, and or like what I would be thinking about is like the Riven is like 1-7, and our Yone is super far ahead. Like, it doesn't. Yeah, Fizz is kind of behind and not super strong, but that's fine. And like I think Kane is hitting form, or he's about to hit a power spike. So like we're pretty strong right now. I'm stronger than Jhin, so and Yon is gonna win side. So all I need to do is just sit mid, pressure it, look for like a pick play if I can get it. But like I'm totally fine with just like with just chilling mid and letting like Kane Yon win the side.
Okay. So earlier in our conversation, you mentioned the fact that you don't feel like you really should trust your teammates, right?
Okay, and that's true, and you're gonna catch me on that later on in this game, right? But like objectively, if I have a 5-2 Yod with a IE Zeal versus a 1-7 Riven, like at that point, I would believe that he can like keep winning side. And I think that is a decision. I think that's like just something that you have to believe in to continue making like the best decision, right? Because now I'm thinking about the game state. And if I was to not believe in him, even though he has a massive lead, then I wouldn't be able to make the best decision for the game state.
Okay. So to me, it sounds like you do trust your teammates, like exactly the amount that you should. No, it's not that you don't trust them. You trust them the exact amount you should, right?
Like it's I'm yeah, but like also at the same time, like, and that's more of like mentality of like you okay. So in order to climb in solo queue, I think you just have to 1v9, right? Like that's the only way to legitimately climb is like you have to be the reason that games are a coin flip. So so in that perspective, like I take greedy runes and like I'm hard on myself of like I need to play the absolute best, right? But that doesn't mean like if I have like a really fed teammate and I believe he's the win condition, I'm gonna do my best to enable him.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
I guess it sounds confusing, but
no, I mean I follow your logic definitely, but I want to know like, do you feel like that? So you just feel like that's the way that solo queue is? That's the only way to play it, or like the best way to play it, rather?
mm, just to have like a 1v9 mentality, like I would think so because I think like if you don't have that mentality and you're just like, well, I lost because like my jungler inted, or I lost because my support just ran it, then you don't really learn anything. Whereas like if the entire game is on you to play perfect, then you can kind of like identify your mistakes better, right? So like,
I think you're
mhm.
jumping to conclusions. I don't think that it's necessary to um have a mentality that you have to 1v9 to be able to recognize that, you know, coming away from a game saying your jungler entered and that's why you lost is uh like I don't think you like those things are go together, right? You can have a
Mhm.
mentality that you try to win as a team, right? And try to have like try your best to like make your team win and still recognize your individual potential in the game state. Do you
Okay,
agree?
could I rephrase that? I guess.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So what if I said and this might like better aspect it. So like in essence, it's not about, obviously and you'll agree with this, it's really not about winning or losing, it's about improving. So like if I'm approaching the game with you know the like I need to like be a 1v9 player, right? Like every game,
Hmm.
which means like I just need to play to the best of my ability. Um then I can be a lot more critical about like everything I do and understand what is the correct play. And in that
Can
case, it's not.
can
Sure,
I
you need your
challenge
team
you on
to.
that, or do you want to finish?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like, is that really required? Do you have to have a 1v9 mentality? I don't think that's true. You can have a mentality that is not, I need to 1v9 literally the entire game to be able to properly, get the most out of a game that you can. Because I believe that the way that you think about the game is correct in a sense, but it's missing a very important part about League that um, is going to help you get better at the game, right? So I think that while you're correct that if you do just assume that you're the only person that has agency on your entire team, then you're going to take a lot more away from the games because you have to take everything into consideration. I do agree with that, but I don't agree that just because you take the most out of a game means that it's going to be necessarily like time efficient or um, like improvement efficient in terms of like getting the best that you can be as fast as you can and in terms of like the speed at which you improve, right? Because there's a lot of um, information that you can get out of any game that you play, right? There, I could go over this game for 5 hours with you and talk about every single thing that you could have improved on and every single mistake that you made. But the problem is that that's not time efficient, that's not important, and most importantly, you're not going to remember like 90% of the things I talk about, right? There's too much information there, right? And having the mindset that, you're the only person in the game that matters, that is going to, like, you're going to carry the game by yourself every single game and it's 1v9, and drawing your conclusions from that. If you Now, I don't want to like presume what you're doing because I don't know exactly what you're doing, but it sounds like to me that you're trying to like do everything that a team should be doing, and you're trying to improve like every aspect of the game at the same time, right? In terms of like macro understanding and shot calling and like decision making, and trying to do like all of that at the same time rather than being able to like condense and just focus on like an individual thing and improve on it, right? Is that
Mm,
fair, or is that like, am I missing the mark?
ye-
So like, for
It's
example,
it's
right? Do you
mhm.
ever right, like go into a game and be like, okay, this game, I don't care what happens, right? All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that I know where the jungler is. If I know where their jungler is or where they could be, then like I feel like I've won the game, right? Like that's my goal, right? When you're looking at a
So,
VOD, do you ever say I'm only looking at this and I'm just gonna ignore everything else?
no, I'd say like the number one thing I look at when I'm looking at a VOD is I'm kind of trying to like understand how I died or if there's any like opportunities I missed out on. Um, uh, and I guess I will respond to like whether or not you're missing the mark. But do you want to like expand on like what I just said of like what I look for in my own VODs?
Like you look for your own deaths and like the things that you could have done.
Hmm.
I mean, that's really generic, right? Like I would have to see how that sort of works and how that functions, right? Um,
The
but
I've never like if anything like I think I'm kind of like bad at like tracking pathing. I
mhm,
kind of just make, especially like worse than other players. I'll just like make assumptions of like, okay, well, he started here, so maybe there's like a 245 to 315 gank, or he's probably on that side, so I'm on weak side, so I play safe. I wouldn't ever say like I make it my sole focus. Um, but so yeah, so I guess I'll respond to that. Um, I don't think like the 1v9. I know like I guess it sounds really bad because it makes it just sound like that. Well, if the game only matters on me, then like I'm only gonna like take away like a limited scope. And in addition to that, I won't make the best decisions because like maybe I'll just like be forcing plays because I just think that is the correct play. But like I don't know, like I if my teammate's the win condition, he's the win condition, and I'm gonna like play towards that. And their games were like I int, and then if I'm inting, then obviously I need to like I'm not like a 1v9 anymore, right? And then I need to like make the best decision if I'm behind on gold or if I just don't have agency on the game. It's like what's the best thing to do? And then I think in that cases it's like I rely on like macro more
mhm.
and just shot calling. Um but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going on like a tangent here.
It's fine. I can talk about the two things. I'll talk about two things. The first thing I want to mention is, I think what I was saying maybe not doesn't perfectly or doesn't really describe what you are. I think, or like what you do rather. I think you are more like holistically looking at the game as a whole, right? And trying to improve upon that basis, but um you're not trying to, or maybe I don't know why you haven't done it, but like you're not like trying to fix the small steps that, you know, that will greatly affect your game if there's enough of them, right? And stuff like jungle pathing, stuff like tracking summoner spells, like these are things that I'm sure you know that you can get better at, right? And there's nothing wrong with just being like that you're just focusing on them, right? And making sure you do it. And then once you feel like you can do it and also work on something else, then you can stop solely focusing on it. I'm sure you know you could improve on that stuff, but that's not something that you've done, right? Um, that's something
Yeah.
you can try, right? I definitely, you know, suggest that you try it because I think it is helpful. But what I want to move on more to is I feel like there's some like not like hypocrisy, but like some like weird double like two-sided mindset where you have this mentality where like you have to 1v9, but then like the second that you can't 1v9 and somebody else can, you just let them do everything, right? And I
It's
want to
not.
sort of challenge that. Oh no, go ahead. If it's not that, like,
Yeah, it's not so much that like, oh well, now the entire game's on you, but like if I'm objectively, it's like right, like I'm here to like win, and I'm here to improve, and it's like the 1v9 mentality has helped me improve, but you don't like win games, right, just by like only being the only 1v9 player. So like as you said before, I look at the game like holistically. So like I'm just trying to do whatever is our best chance of winning. So
mhm,
if my best chance of winning is, so if like everyone on the team's behind, right, and just like this is a very generic example, right? But if I have like a Fed Tryndamere and like an O10 bot lane and I'm mid lane, like my my only like play there, like this is obviously very vague, very generic, is to enable Tryndamere to split push and like win the game through that way, especially if he wins the split, right? It's
mhm,
not so much that like, oh, well, the entire game's on you, Trin. Good luck. It's like I'm gonna enable him to the best of my ability through like macro, through shot calling, and through like playing my own champion, and to enable him to win, to enable him to be the win condition.
mhm.
Does that like kind of make sense?
So I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you play solo queue to win or do you play to improve?
To improve,
Do you?
but
Because you just said that you wouldn't do that. You just said you'd do whatever you necessary to win.
um, I mean, isn't that like improving in an aspect though? Like, what would my alternate play be there if the best
Well,
play?
l- well, I'll tell you. If you're trying to improve, right? That means you're putting yourself at risk of failure, right? You can't improve if you have nothing to lose, essentially, right? Because then there's
Uh huh.
no negative, feedback when you do something poorly, right? So if you feel like when you're playing League and you're in a situation like this where your top laner is really strong and your mindset is okay, they're really strong, so they're going to be the ones to carry, and the best thing I can do is do nothing or like play safe and just not lose, right? To me, that's the attitude and the mindset of somebody that's playing to win, not the mindset of somebody that's playing to improve, right?
Okay.
Because
And
while
mhm.
while let me finish. While it is true that it could be that that's the correct play, right? It isn't about um, what's right or wrong when you're trying to improve, right? When you're trying to improve, it usually means you have something that you're trying to get better at, and I don't think that many people, including yourself, are trying to improve at letting somebody else carry, right? That is something that is actually a skill, right? And it is something that is sometimes need to be taught to people, but it's very, very rarely something you need to focus on. And almost always there's going to be something that's like much more valuable and much more important to work on than just playing safe and not feeding and letting somebody else carry, right? So that's why, in my perspective, it sounds like you have like, okay, you're saying you want to play to learn, but you're playing to win. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah. Okay. I think that is like, yeah. I think like you're making a fair point. Obviously, that's like very we're getting like really really deep into the mindset of like what's right versus what is like actually like winning versus improvement. Um, and I think that's fair. And I wouldn't say that I play like overly passive per se. Because I'm not trying to, but it's like I'm just trying to play the best that I can and going for the best play. But I'll agree with you that I'm not looking at the game from a completely improved mindset, because if I was, then I would be having small goals every game. Like let's say I'm tracking the enemy jungler, or like my goal is to, time summoner spells, and I'm not really doing that as much. Um, if anything, like when I'm like playing mid lane, like my number one goal almost every game is like, okay, I'm gonna track the enemy jungle and I'm gonna track the support, because I feel if I don't do those things, they just surprise me and I die.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, so like I guess I'll agree with you there. Um, I I still feel like the play I outlined you here, where like I'm just playing safe mid, isn't a wrong play.
Yeah,
And
I don't think I agree with that. I don't think it's necessarily the wrong play.
yeah,
But
because
I
I
want.
don't think there's like anything else I can do really.
Mhm,
But if I am wrong, then I'd love to like learn about like why that is wrong.
mhm.
But I also see what you're saying, where it's like I'm saying I'm playing to improve, but I'm also like have a play to win mindset, right?
Yeah. So I recognize that we're kind of going pretty deep, and I will try and bring it back a little more. But I want to ask you, like, what is something that you do, in your opinion, that separates playing to win versus playing to improve? Because, or just tell me, like, what is it? Like, what is something that you do consciously knowing that it's not necessarily best to win, it's intentionally to improve? Is there anything that you do?
Um, I'll play like really, really fucking aggressive at times, where it's like it almost looks like like oh, this is just like a fucking plat player just like running it or like feign
Hmm.
spotting, and I don't do that to like obviously even if it's not the best play, I'm legitimately just doing it so I can kind of like see how far I can
Hmm.
like push the envelope on a champion.
Hmm.
And I found like obviously I found a lot of success in that in like my 1v9 playstyle,
Hmm.
and not only like Katarina, Azir, Ziggs, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's something I think I would do. Or like I will literally like obviously like not so much my main accounts, but like if I'm on like a Smurf or something, I'll literally like blind or pick into a losing matchup because I'm not really there to play to win. I'm there to learn the matchup and I'm there to like understand
Okay. But
how it works.
what about on your main?
Uh
Is it just the pushing the envelope thing that you were mentioning?
yeah, and I think like I'll still do that. I'll still really push the limit
Hmm.
of like aggressiveness when I could just like back off.
And how often do you think does this happen in your opinion?
I think it's like ingrained in my playstyle.
Right. But like, so this happens every game. You're saying you're doing it all constantly.
Yeah, like I'm a very like aggressive player.
Okay. So with that being said, okay, in my opinion, I feel like you have the belief that you're playing to win, but it's under the guise like it's like really just you're playing to, or you have the opinion that you're playing to improve, but it's like really you're playing to win, and there are things that you do that aren't necessarily the best, but for the most part you're only playing to win. That's kind of what it sounds like to me, because it sounds like a lot of the decisions that you're making that you consistently make are like practical decisions, right? You're never making a decision purely with the mindset of um, like not, I shouldn't say never, because you mentioned like you do like try and push the envelope, but that to me is like a very like mechanics based thing and not necessarily like an improvement as like an understanding level, right? In terms of like getting a better as a better player, right? It doesn't seem to me like you're ever really putting yourself in a position to potentially be in a learning situation. You're just trying to win essentially, right? And you do learn doing that, but it's not like your primary goal. To me, it definitely sounds like your primary goal is to win, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's like that obviously is like really like deep and intricate of like sometimes making the best play isn't technically making the most improving play. So like I'll agree with you on that. Um so yeah, I mean that's there. But it's hard to like I guess it's hard for me to like if I have like two plays in front of me, it's really hard for me to pick the suboptimal play because in my mind I'm just trying to be the best player I could be, and that's not necessarily, as you said, like the most path to improving. And when I think of improving, I kind of like think of like I'm thinking of it less as small goals, as you said, which I should be, and more of like, I'm gonna like VOD review and I'm gonna identify my mistakes, and I'm gonna next game I'm gonna try not to make these mistakes.
Right. So I'm going to bring it back to this game so you kind of have a better understanding, because I think that you have like a flawed perception on like what improving is, in my opinion.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go back to my question here, which was essentially, what is the game state? What are you feeling? What is going on, right? And essentially, you told me, right, that you feel that your goal really is just to sort of, you know, chill, not really do much. You're not gonna make any active plays, and you're gonna rely on your Kane and your Yone to essentially win, right? Is that like a fair representation of what you said?
Kind of. And I guess I'll just like add on to that. It's very dangerous for me right now. We don't have like I know I saw Lee at red, and once I see Lee at red, I move up and I like threaten the turret and I play like kind of aggressive. But like if I'm looking at their team, right, it's like Rumble, Riven, Lee, Rakan. Like it's a very heavy engaged team, and I shouldn't be like, like taking that lightly. And like even here, like on this wave, right, like I'm stepping up and I'm like just straight threatening this turret. So I don't know, maybe like I just said it wrong, right? And it's like when I see and like I'm going for like kind of like a cheeky auto here, even though Rakan's like below me. And yeah, so Lee comes to defend turret. So it's not so much
so
that
what
like
so what it so like explain it. What do you think you should be doing then?
I think pressuring mid is good here because I think like I'm bringing the enemy team here, right? Which kind of gives more agency to Yone to win the split.
Right, that's not a plan though. That's just what you're doing, right? But like, what's your plan, right? You know what I mean? Do you know what the difference is?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I guess maybe
So like, I'll go back.
my
This is around here that we stopped before.
so the number one part of my plan is to defend mid turret. That's why I teleported there because I don't want to lose mid turret. And then I'd say like the number two part of my plan is to it's like I'm just going for their mid turret basically, and kind of reacting to the map. So I would say it's a very like shallow plan, right? It's not like super like thought out of like what I'm gonna do or how I'm gonna work with my teammates. But I guess to me, I thought that was the best play, so that was kind of my plan.
Okay. So, okay, you laid out your plan, and of course, a part of that is relying on the fact that Yone and Kane are going to be strong, and theoretically they should be winning, right?
Yep.
So that is like your assessment of like what your plan is. I'm going to give you my assessment just to give you
Okay.
like perspective on how many options that you have, right? League is such a diverse game. There are really so many things that you can do in sort of any given situation. So right off the bat, there are like a ton of things that need to be recognized to essentially be able to like properly assess like what your plan is and what your goal is. Um, Obviously, Fizz is dead, so like that's something that's normal. The first thing that I'm always thinking about when I want to know what I should do is what is like every conceivable option that I have? What is literally everything I could possibly do? And I'll start from there because essentially if I couldn't even conceive it, then I would never do it, right? But if I could conceive it, then it should at least, enter my like it should enter my brain and I should at least think about it and consider whether or not it's good or bad, right? That's like my perspective. So the first thing I would be thinking about is, you know, am I stronger than the person I'm going to be laning against, right? And right now, I assume I'd be laning against Jhin Rakan, and I don't know if I would know that they have no items, but as a Ziggs with Ludens and Sorcerer Shoes, I would feel like I would have lane control, right?
Yeah,
Which
I
means
feel
that
stronger.
I would feel that I would have control of mid lane, and having control of mid lane is incredibly important in League. So I would be thinking about, okay, if I have control of mid lane, most likely, okay, who wins a 3v3, right? Am I stronger as AD support jungle? I would look again and be like, okay, yeah, I am stronger as AD support jungle. My Kane is like incredibly fed, right? He's almost level 11. So then I would be like, okay, I'm in a completely winning lane, and they also can't fight, which means that the only way they could win through mid is if they have more numbers, right? But I have a winning top laner, right, and a losing other mid laner, which means that those should cancel out. They really shouldn't have a numbers advantage as long as I'm paying attention, right? So from my perspective, right, essentially like I could do whatever I wanted, right? I feel like I could just do essentially whatever I wanted. And in this specific case, the options are, like you said, you could go for mid turret. You could play to push out you can play to like get control of one side of the map, like top lane for Fizz, bot lane for Yone. You could play for jungle camps. You could play for Dragon that's coming up in 2 minutes. Red buff's up, but you probably wouldn't play for that because you're too late because you're jungle and support. So right off the bat, like those are all like immediately things that you have to be considering. And before I would get to like, okay, I think the best play is I need to defend mid and not die, I would be thinking, okay, I have a lot of options, and pretty much no matter what I do, my option can always fall back to I can just threaten mid turret, right? Pretty much if I want to go bot lane or if I want to go top lane or if I want to go dragon, pretty much all of those is going to start with I'm going to push mid lane. So in my opinion, having the plan be I'm going to go mid, I'm going to try and pressure mid, and that being the whole plan is really like a shallow way of looking at it, because there's a lot more you can build off of that plan, right? There's so many more options, and essentially just like limiting yourself to like, okay, I have this amount of information right now. I can't really like do more because I just need to see what happens because my Fizz is dead and Dragon's coming up in 2 minutes. Like I don't know what's gonna happen yet, but I'm like thinking about all these things. Like, am I gonna go top lane and get bot tier 2? Am I gonna go or am I gonna go bot lane and get bot tier 2? Am I gonna go top and get top tier 2? I don't know what's going to happen, and I would be needing more options. So I would already be thinking about all of these factors and coming in. So we'll play out the game and just sort of see what happens. But I think that the key thing I want you to take away from what I was saying is that the way that you were like looking at the game is like very one-dimensional. It sounds like to me, because you're just sort of like saying, okay, this is the best thing to do, so I did it, right? And you're not like giving all the options that you can, and you're not putting yourself in a position to essentially like
Look at other plays. Yeah.
one, look at other plays, and also two, like potentially be wrong about something, right? Because let's say that you did this and then died, you're like, okay, well I died, that's not good, but like I didn't know what else I could do, so like I just made a mistake. I was just like, I should have walked up, right? But if you make a play and then you go top, for example, and then you die because you were trying to dive and you shouldn't have died, or you're trying to take turret and you should not have been taking the turret, that gives you, concrete evidence that like, okay, I went for this plan and it wasn't good, right? And being able to like judge all the plans, or like being able to effectively manage like which plan or like which idea is best and which idea is not best is like not an easy thing to do. It's why the game is hard. So that's why it's very common to like not know what to do, right? A lot of League is going to be like sensory overload, where like there are so many things you need to be thinking about, and you just won't have the time to think about it. And that's why I like implore you, like I hope that when you do come back into these situations, and we'll do more, I'll ask you more about like what you think you should be doing. I want you to give like a more complete answer that like really encapsulates everything about the game, right? Because
Okay.
I think that if you don't like give yourself the opportunity of looking for these other options, you're never gonna find them, right? That's why you feel like there's only like one thing that you can really be doing. It's because you never try to look for something else, right? And maybe, in 30 out of 31 games, you're not going to find anything, but maybe one time it's going to work and it's going to completely win the game in 1 second, right? But if you're
Yeah,
never
no, no,
looking for
I
it, you're never going to find it.
Yeah, so no, I totally agree with you in the sentiment that it doesn't really seem that I'm just automatically assuming like, well, this is the best play, right? And a more holistic and better approach would be to obviously think about, number one, understand what is every single play you have, and then kind of make your deduction from there. Obviously, like I still think like there was not really any other play in that instance of like mid lane.
But you recognize that that's not the point, right?
Yeah, I do recognize that's not the point. The point is to understand, what is every possible play at any given moment. And they're right, there's going to be a game where there is a different play.
That's like, I mean, that's not the point. That's like what I think you should do. The point is that you need to essentially allow yourself to make a decision, right? If the way that you're playing out the game is, I'm doing this because it's the only option, you're never really making a decision. You're essentially just playing out the game, right? But the reason I'm getting you to list out every possibility is because now, when you list out every possibility, now you have a choice to make, right? And a choice is
Mhm.
where something could potentially go wrong or where something could potentially go right, right? And that's what's like
Mhm.
really important when you're trying to improve, because if there's nothing like concrete to look at, then it's going to feel very difficult to feel any sense of it, like improvement, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I get. I totally get what you're saying.
So okay, we'll speed up a bit and we'll just go again right into the same thing to get back to mid lane.
Yeah.
All right,
So
what's the plan, Chief?
I'm insanely strong. The enemy team has soul point, so we need to be playing for that. We have less agency on the game because Kane's going back and Fizz is dead. So like my plays are shove mid and get top vision. I don't know the exact time dragon spawn. Oh, where
It
is that
says
on
right
the
here.
right?
Yeah, it's right here.
What is the time? I can't see your cursor.
Cloud is 3:37 and Herald is in
3:37. Okay, so
20
like
seconds.
yeah, so Cloud is going to take a while. Obviously, we don't want to give a free Herald because that's the only real objective on the map. So my plays are either like number one, I should be shoving mid. I don't think there's any play where I don't shove mid. And that's not me like saying like, oh, that's the best play and I'm me telling on that. That's like every play I do still depends on me shoving mid.
Right.
So my plays are either I shove mid and I go bottom with Leona and we clear out vision and we kind of like get vision in the bot area for Yone, or I shove out mid and I do it on the opposite side of the map and I get vision for Herald and just see if the enemy team is going to try to go for that. Um, Obviously there's like a lot Mia, so that is still kind of dangerous. So yeah, so I would say like those are like my initial plans, or
Okay.
like those are like my things I can do.
So that's a lot. I like that a lot better, but I want you to go further because what you said, right, was you could go top and you could get vision for Herald, or you could go bot and get vision, right?
And okay, and then like I guess one more thing is I am like massive right now. Like obviously I have Ludens, I have Leandries, I have like
Mm-hmm.
my Dark Seal, I have my Scaling Runes. I'm level 11, so I have level 2 R. So like my third play is literally shove mid, have Leona like like ping Leona to like be aggro, like get an ulti and just one shot, and literally
Mm-hmm.
just like one shot anyone on their team.
Mm-hmm. So okay,
So
that's good, but specifically talking about the first two options that you gave, to me, you gave like 75% of a plan. You didn't really give like 100% of a plan. I think when you said get vision topside for Herald, that's like full complete plan. But when you said get vision bot side, that's like not really a plan, right?
to
That's like
so
you just get vision,
mhm.
but like what's the vision for, right?
Yeah, so and I think in like that aspect, it's like it's not so much that like it's just like, well, that's the end of the plan. It's more so like I'm waiting for more information. So it's like obviously if I get that vision and I see that the enemy team is hovering bottom, or I see that like Riven's playing very aggressive against the Yone, then I can now make the decision of like, do I want to shadow Yone or do I want to let them clump bottom and then go for Herald, right? Um, or like punish mid if they all like go bottom, right? And so like that vision that I would get bot side for Yone not only is gonna like protect him in his split, but it's also gonna give me like more information to like make a decision. Because like I don't like what, and I guess you can, I'll ask you this, right? Like what would the decision be, right? If I like if I don't really have any more information.
So, in my opinion, if you're gonna play bot side, so okay, in my opinion, if you're analyzing the game state, the most important thing you need to mention is that Herald is coming up in 20 seconds, which you did, which was good. But in my opinion, that's like virtually the only thing that matters in the entire map. But that doesn't mean that the only play is to go to Herald, right? What that does mean is that there's essentially two paths that you can play out from this position. The first is you're going to play for Herald. The second is you're not going to play for Herald. to me, those are like the two paths, right? So, and they would obviously cover every possible, you're either playing for it or you're not. So, I think in this situation, playing for Herald is like very like, I think we both understand like how that would work. So I'm not going to go into that. If you're not playing for Herald, right, which is kind of what you said, but like to be honest, I was kind of confused by your explanation. In my
Mhm.
opinion, if you're playing for Vision bot side, it means you're not playing for Herald, right? That's my opinion, because it's 20 seconds to Herald's up. So, if you're waiting for Fizz to be back on the map and Kane to be back on the map, like Herald's already going to be dead, right? So, in my opinion, if you're going to be trying to play for Vision bot side, like it's definitely not to play for Herald at all, right?
Can
So,
I like further go in on that point then?
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I didn't phrase it in the way of like I'm either playing for Herald or I'm not. So like if I'm going bot side, I'm playing for Yone, and I'm playing for like vision control of bot side, where like the dragon will eventually be up. And like yes, that's like really far away, but like also maybe if I can make the play of clearing out vision, and when they come in toward it, and I have like me and Leona like sitting there or waiting there, then like I can make a play with that.
Okay.
Um.
So that's a
So
plan. That part of it, at least, is a plan. Getting Vision
yeah,
bot
and I.
side and sitting in it and letting them walk in and kill them is definitely a plan. In my opinion, a
Mhm.
plan is not get Vision to bot side and wait for Cloud Drake.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't really like, and like that's kind of what like how I was saying is like, I guess I didn't formulate it that far, but it's like I don't have that information,
Hmm.
right? Because it could be very likely that the enemy team doesn't even go like bot for like 3 more minutes.
Right.
Um,
That's totally possible.
yeah, so I'm kind of like waiting for more information before I can make the best decision.
Okay, so in my opinion, there's one more very important piece of information in terms of making a plan that you have not mentioned a single time yet. Um, it's not
Okay.
something that it's more about like something you can do that you just haven't mentioned, and it has to do with obviously not playing for Herald. So I want you to think about that, and I want you to tell me what it is that you're missing, because there's one thing that you've not mentioned yet. You've kind of talked about some of the steps of doing it, but you haven't like explicitly stated what it is. And to me, like that's like the other option, because to me, like there's two options in this situation.
Okay. Would it have something to do with getting vision control of the side of a map and making a
Yeah,
play with
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Would it have to do with getting specifically enemy jungle vision control and then making a play with that? Or like just
I mean, you're not making a play with vision, no.
or with like our champions per se?
Not really a champion thing.
Not a champion thing. I'll just be very honest. It's like I guess I don't know.
What's
So
the
yeah.
main goal of League? What's the goal?
It's a trick question, Dick. It's either improve or win. I don't know, man.
No, it's not a
I-
trick question. What's the goal of League? The game.
destroy the enemy nexus
How do you destroy the enemy nexus?
by putting yourself in a position to best do that.
In
Gaining
a literal sense. How do you get to that point to kill the nexus?
gaining a gold lead, playing like the map
No,
better,
that's too
killing the enemy
abstract.
team.
Literally, how do you eventually kill the nexus?
You destroy the turrets in the way.
Exactly. Kill the turrets.
So you're saying the play I haven't mentioned is just killing turrets.
Yeah. Play bot side and play for the bot tier 2. To me, that's the other option, right? Do you see how that's like
Mm,
an option? Or do you not see how that's an option?
okay, so that seems like really rough to do because like so Kane's going back and Fizz has a 30-second timer. So if I go bottom, like I can just get collapsed on with numbers advantage possibly.
Right.
And also if I go
Before
bottom,
wait.
mhm.
Before we talk about whether or not the play is good, because again, that's not the point. right?
You're just asking whether or not I considered it. So
Yeah,
I didn't
you didn't consider
I
it.
didn't think the play was good, so I didn't consider it.
You didn't fully think about it, right? And
Yeah,
now
yeah.
I'm going to explain why it actually is something you need to consider. So the reason that you need to think about taking bot tier 2 is because if you're thinking about the game from the opposing person's perspective, the opposing team, then you would come to the conclusion that, okay, Fizz is dead, they're going to probably take the Herald for free, right? And while it is true that you can play the game in a way where you're very preventative and prophylactic and not allowing the enemy team to do that, nobody does that in solo queue. People don't even do that in competitive, so no one, like, that's a very unlikely thing. So in this situation, right, Fizz is dead, so I would think that, okay, playing for Herald's probably not an option. I would just be playing to try and get bot side control and potentially take bot tier 2. Again, I don't know for a fact that I'm going to take bot tier 2, but I would be trying to take bot tier 2. So that would be my goal. And like you said, depending on the information that I get, I would change my plan, right? So I think that, you know, the plan of playing for Herald and not playing for Herald is pretty easily decided based on the fact that Fizz is dead for 10 seconds after it spawns and he won't be there. But, you know, immediately once I see this, potentially the plan is different, right?
Yeah, at this point, like I could just shove mid and help out Yon bot.
Right. So now the plan is very different, in my opinion. But let's say that, and I don't really want to go into this too hard, but essentially, the reason that it's fine to potentially play for Herald or potentially play for bot tier 2 is that they're going to have more numbers on the top side, which means that you
Yeah,
have more
we're
numbers
never
on
gonna
the
win
bot
Herald.
side,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're going to have control of bot side, and they don't really want to walk in, like you said, so you can potentially favor for bot lane because you're really strong, like you said, so you can push mid and then go bot lane, right? And this is why, like, thinking the game like 1v9 mentality isn't that good, because I think the reason it's hard for you to see that you can play for bot tier 2 is because you wouldn't actually be the person in bot lane. You would be mid. And you would push mid, and Yon would push this, and you'd walk to Yon's lane. And you'd kill this turret, right? That's like the goal, right? But obviously, like, all of that goes out the window immediately once these two people show bot lane. But, you know, I'll try and go a little faster because I'm going a little slow, but essentially, like, that's why, in my opinion, like, that's something you have to think about, right? Whether or not it's good is, like, not that important. It's just like, it's definitely not like never going to be good, right? There are definitely situations where that is going to be the correct play. Maybe if Fizz isn't dead, it's the best play, right? Because you can immediately just walk bot lane instantly and not have to worry, and Fizz can just walk mid at some point. But that's why, like, that's like something you have to think about. And that's also why, like, only thinking about the game from like a 1v9 perspective is going to make it harder to see these different types of opportunities, because you can't rely only on yourself to win, right? You really have to rely, I mean, you can rely only on yourself, but you're not going to see all the opportunities that you could if you didn't only rely on yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And yeah, I think it's very true that I wasn't really like considering bot as a bot going for like bot tier 2 as a play. And you're also correct in saying like that probably was like before Yon died, and you know those two people we were bot, that probably was the best play.
Yeah. And again, right, like, you can have a plan and then change your plan like 5 seconds later. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But like, being able to pinpoint a specific instance and being like, okay, what is my plan? Why am I doing something? And then acting upon it, right? Like, that's going to give you the information you need to, like, know what you need to improve on, right? Because if you're consistently making a mistake in a specific call that you're making, right, being able to know why you're choosing that play is going to make it easier to have a better understanding of when to actually do that play in the next case, right? So, okay. This is just a random fight. I don't really care about the fights, I'm going to be honest. You guys all die here. I'm going a little slow, so I have to move a little faster. I apologize, but I won't try to rush too much.
You're good.
Alright. You guys just all died. What's the plan, Chief?
Dragon, soul point. Like, it's not the end of the game if they get soul, and like, sure, there's the option of trading like Baron, but we don't really do Baron fast enough. So we really just want to play for this like steal, I think. And I think that's like a pretty good thing to do because our 5v5, if we play it right, can be stronger. And in addition to that, I have a really high chance to steal as Ziggs with my RQ combo and like my jungler comboing off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So like to me, I'm sure they're like there are other things I can like do. I don't, like there's very limited plays at this point in the game, right? I spawned. There's 19 seconds to dragon. There is no way we can like do Baron in time because like my teammates aren't like there. Um, and it's like we just want to take this 5v5 and we just want to win it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely like narrow viewed, but like I don't really see many other like plays here when the enemy team is at soul point.
You don't see them, or you don't think they're good.
I don't really think they're good.
So tell me what the other plays are. So you said contest dragon looking for a steal, right? What's the other plays?
Okay, so like even before we like go for like the contest steal, I think like the first like outright play is killing Riven because she's obviously really far and we already have teammates near.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one play. The other play is to say screw dragon, we're not going to get it in time. So let's just rush Baron, and if the enemy team runs across mid to contest us, then we can fight them and we have like pretty good zone control. So like maybe there's a chance we can win that.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, like we can fight them after they take dragon, but even then that's not like the greatest thing. Then obviously like maybe like waiting for like item spikes or something like that, but I don't really think that's like a good play either. And outside of that, I don't really think there's many plays. And like one last play could be maybe we don't get Baron, but maybe we just like concede dragon and we just set up vision all across Baron and then just try to take a favorable fight there.
Okay.
And as far as turrets go, I don't really see how we get turrets in this situation.
Okay. I like that. That was pretty everything that is possible. I like that. I just want like a nomenclature thing. Like the way you're saying like steal, does that mean like you're gonna fight or like you're only trying to steal the dragon? Just like
We're like I think we should take the fight at this point because I'm
okay.
strong and I know I'm strong, but I'm just saying what further reinforces that play is the fact that I'm Ziggs. So like stealing is even more prevalent. So like that just makes it a better play.
Right. So
But yeah, so I get what you're saying, like steal versus fight.
yeah,
But
like
I
they're
think we
two
just take the
different
fight.
plays, right? I just want to
Yeah,
clarify that.
I think we take the fight.
So, in your opinion, the best play here is to take a fight.
It is to take the fight, yeah.
To take the fight for dragon. Okay. So it was a bit of a trick question because there's no wrong answer, right? So this is sort of like the culmination of why this kind of thinking is really important is that it actually doesn't matter where you come to and like what conclusion you come to, right? I could tell you what I think is the best play, but it actually doesn't matter because in essence, all that matters is that you thought about all that. You're like, okay, these are all the things I could have done, and these are all the plays I could have done. I'm going to choose this play, and I know why I'm choosing this play over all the other plays. And then when I see what happens, then I'll have the information to know like whether I should do something different next time or whether I did the correct thing, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think like something that you kind of pointed out is I just like automatically jump to what I think is the best play, and I'm not like fully considering all my other options.
Yeah. So like, this is like a good example of like now that you've like fully thought about it, the best is like if you do it during the game, right? Like obviously, you know, we can't be doing it during the game, or I mean we could, but like I'm doing it post like VOD review, not live gameplay. But like ideally you're doing this during the game and you're making this choice like consciously during the game, right? That would be like the best case scenario, so that when you're in this scenario in the future, you have that game of essentially practice where like, okay, this happened before or a similar situation to it, and I know what I did, and I thought that that was like good or bad, right? And something that I didn't really touch on too much was considering what the opposing team's gonna do. So like for example, Ribbon just like walked mid with Herald, which is like something that maybe you needed to consider. Maybe getting Dragon is not worth losing 2 towers and inhib, right? This is something that you're gonna learn from, right? And these are gonna be factors that affect whether or not you feel like this is a good play or not. Because while it is true that you guys won the fight, it's not guaranteed you guys were going to win the fight. And it was guaranteed that if you guys did decide to fight, that this would probably happen, right? So now you have that information for the next time that you're in the situation, right? So
Yeah.
that's why it's really, really good to think, in my opinion, it's really, really good to be thinking about the game in this way. So we'll move on to like the next form. We're just gonna get like more essentially reps in of like doing this. And I want you to like not only think about what you're doing this time, but also think about what the opposing team is doing, because that's also something that you need to be doing theoretically the exact same amount of times you're doing it for your own team, right? At any point you're thinking about what you should be doing, you should also be thinking about what the enemy team wants to do. So let's pause it right here. What's the plan? Dragon was just killed. Baron is up.
Baron is the main objective. We have lost mid inhibitor, so that means we need to have like extra pressure of shoving out mid. That's something you already do when you need Baron control, but like even more so now. Our bot lane is pushed. Our top lane is even, but they're pushing it. So like the one very bad play is to like go all go bottom and give up Baron, I guess. But number one, like no matter like what you do here, it's like you either play for Baron or you don't. And it's very obvious that we should be playing for Baron, because if we lose Baron, we're gonna lose our inhibitors, and that would be really bad. Since we're already down one. So we're playing for Baron here. I have teleport, but it doesn't make sense for me to be bottom because I'm a very like poke mage artillery champ. So it's better if I'm just near Baron. I have pressure. I have a chance to like one shot to make a play. Yone should be bottom. Obviously, the enemy team, they also want to play for Baron. The Riven is like a very lethality, non kind of team fighty build. So she could just be splitting like she did earlier. In which case, like, we just have to have Yone match her, because I just shouldn't be matching her as Ziggs. It's not, it doesn't like, it's not the best use of my potential this game. So like our number one goal here, and I think the majority of the plays, is just how we're gonna play for Baron and what we're gonna do. Are we gonna play for a steal? Are we gonna just outright go in there and get vision control and like look for a pick? Are we just shoving mid and then threatening like mid turret, and then they kind of have to react to us, and when they do, we either take the fight or we go back and we get Baron control. I would say that was like a brief overview of like a lot of the plays we could do.
Okay, and what do you think you should do?
Get Baron control, or like get Baron vision, because I still think we're stronger 5v5. We just won. Sure, like Riven did get that playoff where she got her mid inhibitor, but we just like wiped a team fight. So
And do what with that Baron vision? Because getting Baron vision isn't like a play, right? Like that's like the first part of
So
the play.
I'll threaten. So I think we should threaten it. I think if we don't have Yone, there's no point in starting it, and we should just like take out all vision control and force them to face check us. And as Ziggs, I just have a lot of agency at this point in the game, because there's a lot of chokes that the enemy team has to go through to even get near Baron, and I'm gonna make it like really hard for them. So like just forcing them to face check us while maintaining mid priority, I think is like a really good play.
So what do you think is the play? Like, what is the order of events that needs to happen for that to happen?
So we need to shove out. So top lane and mid lane need to be shoved, and then as a team, we need to like go into the top river and start like scanning and removing all of their wards and making sure like they're not camping us. Yone can either come with us or he can just go bottom and split because he has teleport. And I think those are like kind of the initial steps of like what we need to do between like me, Kane, Leona, and Fizz.
Okay. So I noticed something that is very important in this specific situation. I don't know if you noticed it, but there's a little slight oversight in your plan. And it has to do with the way that you allocated champions in regards to your plan, right? So it has to specifically do with what was one of the prerequisites for going to Baron and getting control. that
We need to. Hmm.
that contradicted what you later said about like what all the players should be doing. Because
Are
the
you
re-
talking about like how I talked about Yon?
yeah,
Uh, I mean, like, so I pretty much just like said like Yon has like freedom. To me, it's like I think it's better if Yon's with us. Like objectively speaking, it's better if Yon's with us because bot's already pushed. So why go there and like waste your TP? But I can't necessarily control what Yon is doing, and I think we can still do that play as 4 people because the enemy team is like still pretty weak,
mhm.
and Yon could always like teleport in.
So that's not necessarily what you said before, right? You said that when you needed that if you were gonna have go to Baron, you needed everybody there, or you needed specifically Yone there to threaten, right?
To do Baron, we need Yon there.
Right. So from the enemy's perspective, right, it would make sense that they would probably think the same. No, you guys don't really have Baron damage other than Yone.
Yeah, yeah, I
So if
agree.
Yone isn't there, then your plan doesn't really make any sense,
Yeah, so I
right?
should be probably calling for Yon. That'd be like a better decision.
So calling for low, like you need to know what Yone is doing, like exactly, is essentially my point, right? That's
Mm,
why I said like there's like an oversight, because like I noticed it, where like you said like you need Yone there, otherwise they're not gonna be super scared because you guys don't have any Baron damage, right?
mm-hmm.
And like you need to know what Yone is doing, which is really important in this situation, right? And again, the way that you can easily identify that is like always think about like what the opponent wants. And um, the reason, or not the reason, but I'll just keep playing it out. But the effect that that is going to have on like what your plan is going to be is like really really important, because knowing like how you want, like when you want to make the play is going to make it easier for like Yon to know when he needs to be here essentially, right? Because
Yeah.
if you guys think like, okay, Yon, like we're gonna start Baron like in like a minute because of some reason, then Yon knows that he can be bot lane for 45 seconds and then he walks up, right? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's because it takes a minute to get control, right? Like you guys don't have to do Baron, you guys just need to get control without him, and then he needs to come up, right? Like that's like a plan, but like that's something that needs to be like, you know, well thought out, right? And that's gonna be something that when you go back and look, you're gonna be like, oh, I didn't think about this, right? I didn't think about the fact that I need Yon actually there to like trap in the jungle, right? And I didn't communicate to that to him, so like I wasn't like ready for that, right? So that's gonna be uh, like one of the things that you can improve on, and like the ways that like going about like this planning, like very like all-encompassing planning is gonna like help, because there's always gonna be like little nuances that you don't think about or like you don't see that is gonna like potentially change the outcome of the entire play, right? Um, I would not be surprised if you guys, you know, were sitting here waiting for them to walk in and they never walked in because Yon is literally showing bot lane the whole time, right? Like I would not be surprised if that happened because, you know, they don't need to walk in, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's like why this like practice comes really in handy,
Of just of planning out your plays, yeah.
right? But I think
Because, mhm.
like overall like that plan like is very well thought out, and like again the whole point is mainly just think about what you're doing in that way. Like make sure that you're having like a reason for doing everything and that you're like actively choosing to do that, because going back to like getting better at macro decision making and like, you know,
Yeah, there could
snowballing and
be.
like shot calling,
Mhm.
like I understand that it would be very difficult to get better if like every time you're making a decision you're like, yeah, this is the only decision I can see, right? It's hard to see like how you'd actually improve if all you're thinking about is, man, the only play I see is this, so I'm gonna do that, right? And if you're not like giving the time, like your own brain, to like the time to like fully think out these other options, it's going to be hard to see like the value or the merit in them, even when it seems like they're not there, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just going to play out the rest of this game. I think like I talked a lot about what I really wanted to. Um, Plus I'm kind of going like over time a little bit, but it's okay. The other guy's in chat, he's just chilling. He's okay. But we'll just kind of like go through this game, and I want you to kind of like tell me like just give me your like thoughts on what you feel like you really gained, like what like you focusing, or like what you like were the most important things that you got out of this sort of session, essentially.
I mean, I think you've given like me like a lot of perspective on more of like planning. I think there's like a very big truth that I'm kind of just like I just think like, hey, what's the best play, and I kind of just snap to that, and I'm not like fully thinking out every play and like the plan and the steps required, and because of that, it can lead to like suboptimal plays, and that's also like hurts my rate of improvement because if I'm not like making decisions and making like active choices of like the trade-off, then it's harder for me to like compare.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say those are like some of my main takeaways.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Like I think that's definitely the most important thing. Um, just some like small things that I want to say like more at the end. I think that again reiterating or like re-emphasizing, like I agree that that's definitely the most important thing, like giving yourself that active participation, like that active role in making decisions is like very important to improvement, as well as I want to sort of mention that I think it's something you should consider, but to make it easier for you like in the future, um, there's a real I feel like you're gonna have a problem, not problem, but like I feel like you're gonna run into, or you have already ran into a situation where like you feel like you don't need to do something because somebody else is strong, and I didn't really get to it or like get to where I wanted to get to. But I think it's important to note that just because there's like an avenue to success and there's like a way you guys are gonna win, that doesn't mean like you have to do it or that you're like forced to do it. If there's a like theoretically like a good play that you see, even if it's not in like your avenue of success that you like laid out for yourself, you can like make an active choice to do it. And specifically what I'm talking about is like when you're like sort of like in this game when Yon was really strong and you were like not like super trying to make a play, and you were kind of mainly just trying to keep mid control. I think that it's something to keep in mind that just because you don't have to do something doesn't mean that you shouldn't do something, right? The opponents
Yeah.
aren't going to be playing perfect, so keeping in mind that like you have that option is, I think, really important.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Obviously, like, yeah, because you're talking about like it like generally, so that's fair. Obviously, like this game went like really sour because like Riven just started winning 1v1s at like 07. Um, so like that one condition kind of went out, but then I kind of like turned myself into win condition or just like macro shot calling.
The Riven actually did a pretty good job at like making the best out of a bad situation, right? Like he was doing a pretty
Yeah,
good
she
job of
had
knowing.
so much pressure.
Yeah, like she was putting a lot of pressure. Like you guys won this dragon, but she got mid inhib. You guys were pushing with Baron, and she got bot inhib. It is good, you know. These are the kinds of things that you're gonna look at and be able to do when you have a much more practice, like looking for these other options, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the times, the reason that something won't work is with the assumption that the opponent is gonna like properly respond, right? And being able to recognize when the opponent isn't properly responding, or being able to like make plans with like multiple layers is gonna make your game like level up, right? So going back to what I said like a lot earlier when we were talking about this tower, and you said you just wanted to like push and hit this tower, and I was talking about how my plan would be like that, but like also a bunch of other things that like also include that plan. It's kind of the same thing where like Riven was kind of, in my opinion, this game, I don't think that she was just had the opinion like, okay, I'm gonna do this. She was kind of looking at the game state and be like, oh, they're not respecting this specific thing, so I'm gonna do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's speculation, but I think that's something to, like, that's like a good thing to keep in mind is another value, or another important point with always thinking about these options is that sometimes options that didn't seem good at the beginning could eventually like turn into the best option if you like just keep it in the back of your mind, right? So
Yeah, because like the game state's gonna change.
yeah, something
And
happened, right?
Mhm.
Someone might have randomly got a solo kill, and now you have to do something else if you want to make the best play, right? So
no, definitely agree. And it was like I think like outside of that like Rift Herald play, which I really wasn't like thinking about her doing because I wasn't like actively thinking about whether or not she had Rift Herald. Like I still was thinking about like Riven a good amount when she got that initial play, and I was just kind of expecting like Yone to deal with her, because I would imagine like that's his role. But he had like late, there were just like things he did where the game state just like changes because he didn't like react properly to it, and I guess I didn't like react properly as a result of that. Because now that like I already had in mind my best play, and now that like that best play is kind of out the window, it's like and as you said, like I'm not thinking about the other plays, so now one of them has become the best play, but I like wasn't thinking about it beforehand.
so I think that's pretty much it. I think I'm pretty much like I think I've got everything that I really wanted to say. I think that definitely we've talked again. I don't want to like over like communicate it, but I think we had like good progress today. I think this is good. Just keep in mind those things that we talked about, and I think everything is going to be like everything will feel a lot more productive to you.
Yeah, no, it was definitely like a really like, and I think that's why like I liked it was like a counter to your insight, and I think you had very like right like we didn't really like discuss this game specifically much, which I found like interesting, and that's kind of like what I focus on. But you're talking about things like more generally, and like a way that like I'm not actually considering the game. So I actually I did find that very interesting.
And that's oftentimes like one of the best ways to improve, right? Like the mindset behind making a play is just as important as the play itself, right? So, crap, is this like a base race or something?
Yeah, Riven literally wins like the base race.
Alright.
We somehow lose like a 5v4 with Elder at their bot and him.
Well, I hope that was helpful to you. Thank you for applying. I hope that this helped you, and hopefully I'll see you at some point when I do a repeat. But I hope that this helps you and you get some valuable improvement, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll definitely keep in mind. I will. Yeah, thank you so much for the coaching session. I know we like definitely went over, but it was really insightful. And I think I could. There's definitely like a lot I should reflect on. So I will drop my sub, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
very much. Appreciate it,
the
and welcome to the
coaching
Ablazeolive.
review.
I also think like this is like a good game where we didn't really go over the whole thing, and we would have if we went a little faster. But I implore, or I think you should go back and watch your games and like really go back and do what we said, what I was telling you, right? In every sort of like state of the game where like you're resetting essentially, just think, okay, what should I do? What are the options, right? Do it in game, and then in your VOD review, do it there too, because maybe there's something you didn't see in the game that you did see in the VOD review, and that's gonna really help. But again, thanks so much, and I hope you have a great night, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, and I'll definitely. I think that's a really good tip of advice. I'll definitely do that.
All right,
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, man.
take
Catch you
care.
later.
Take care.